Welcome back to Bankrollers Get Money Community. So I'm going to share my theory with you guys that there are only 3 ways to become wealthy. So I'm not sharing this information, or I didn't come up with this because I'm an accountant or I'm great with business or anything like that. I've actually done my own research. My research actually started because I had my own situation going on, and in order for me to understand how I personally ended up in this specific situation, I had to pretty much do my research in regards to history. Now, that goes beyond just, the environment we grew up in, our family that we come from, their situation. Like, it goes beyond that, my research. I went beyond that because at the end of the day, even before we are born, our parents are born, and their parents are born, and then their parents are born, and when all of us are born, we are automatically put into certain paradigms. What I mean by paradigms that we're born into would be our socioeconomic status. When we're born in a specific community. We're born to go to school and work 40 hours a week. Who said that's how I want to live my life when I was growing up? I didn't decide that. That's what was decided for me, and therefore by me just being in this existence, I have to exist within this paradigm, which was created for me. So before I get into it, briefly, my background: I started my first business at 19. About 27, I entered the workforce, and I've had a couple of businesses during that time, that age range in my life. And so therefore, going back to school, I already had an extensive amount of experience with business. I knew that going back to college, they couldn't really teach me more than what I have already gained or learned from experience in regards to business. So when I went back to school, I just really got intrigued and caught up in figuring out how are we placed in these paradigms and why they exist. Why is it that, the wealth gap is between the rich and the poor, but the rich people are mostly white and the poor people are majority black? Although it's a rich and poor thing, somewhere in there's like a racial kind of issue as well. So that's what my research was on. However, getting through all of that, all of it became in alignment with what I do now and why I invest. So there are only 3 ways to become wealthy or rich. And I want to keep celebrity and fame and clout out of that, because we all know that yes, you can become rich through your celebrity and your status quo. However, once you become rich through celebrity and status quo, to some extent, that's branding. You become a brand, and therefore you become a business. One of the ways you can become wealthy is by way of business, right? Owning a business, you can become wealthy or rich. But the key to owning a business to become wealthy or rich is that you must have labor. Without labor, your company is not growing on that scale to become wealthy and rich. Meaning, people working for you. You must have people working for you. The more people you have working for you, that means the more you're producing. The more you're producing, the more you are able to sell. The more you sell, the more money you are making. Okay. So, what is business? Business is when you sell a product or sell a service, right? However, to become wealthy and rich, you must employ people. You must have people supply you with labor. That's Capital by Karl Marx. It's like a sociology book. However, the book is about capitalism. It's about a capitalist society. In the book, he speaks of capitalism, how, like, the origins of capitalism, and what will be the effects to come of capitalism in the future. His conclusion was that in a capitalist society, it will either lead to monarchy or socialism, because if the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer, then the rich will be the people with the money will be the people to lead the monarchy and just decide, what's what for the large majority of the people. Or the poor people will uprise and get upset with the rich people taking advantage and taking all the wealth, and they would combat and fight against the system, and the society would turn into a socialist society. So this is interesting because right now, with the protests that we're having, that is what is well, he pretty much said what happened in his book. That's Capital. It had a specific chapter on labor, and that chapter on labor pretty much went back to the slavery system. That's where the capitalist society initially started, obviously through slavery. Why? Because the key factor in the financial aspect of slavery is that there were free labor. After I acquired the information from Das Kapital by Karl Marx, it affirmed everything that I felt about business from when I first started my business. It's the only way to become rich and wealthy, is to have a business. However, I learned, or I conceptualized through that book, that no, you just don't only need to have a business. You must have laborers. You must have laborers. And I delved deeper into that when I went to research the Transatlantic slave trade, which is the American slavery system that existed. This was the initial capitalist, sort of the beginning of a capitalist society through the slave trade. They had a plan. The plan was to have the land, cultivate the land through free labor, and sell the resources they've produced from the land. So the key that they was missing to the puzzle was pretty much the people, the free laborers. Where would they pretty much, obviously we know they went to Africa, we know. Okay. So that's how, obviously, black people and African Americans became slaves, and that's also how the slavery culture transitioned from it being a culture of being in debt, being enslaved due to debt, or being enslaved due to committing a crime against society, into a system of color. So it was the transatlantic slave trade that brought on this whole colorism. And through research, I researched and understood race, that there's no such thing as race. That was all created by the Americans during slavery. So getting back to the point, slavery was big business because they didn't have to pay for labor. Now ask yourself, why is it that, you hear like employees, fight for minimum wage to be raised, they need higher income, higher wages. Y'all, like, employees fight for higher wages because the original capitalist system you get paid no wages. You're a fucking slave. So, of course, you go from $0, you have to fight your way up. When the people that's giving out the money is like, we're used to paying this. You should be grateful that you're getting this. That goes back to slavery. So, yeah, slavery was tobacco, cotton. Cotton is king. That was it. But it was tobacco, rice, and cotton. What these people did, they did their research. They went to Africa and they knew that, okay, these group of people, this tribe, they grow rice, they're great at rice. Okay, they snatched them up, and what they did is they took them to specific areas in the U.S. and sold them off in areas where these people are already knowledgeable to cultivate the land. You understand? So when you think about hiring labor, you think you hire new labor, new employees, you will have to train them in order to get the job done. No, they literally, it was like a puzzle these people researched. So yeah, because cotton was king, they needed more slaves. And you know, this is when I discovered that the financial markets existed during slavery. Like, not financial markets, but financial products for slaves. Like, slaves were collateral because slaves were assets in a business. So I want to get to slavery in the financial markets. I'm going to use this example because usually mortgages are used on homes. However, during this time when slavery was going on, they used mortgages for slaves. You have a banking or financial institution. These institutions can create financial products. What are financial products? Like a savings account, a checking account, mortgages. All of these things are created by financial institutions within the financial markets. The banks, they wanted to capitalize on more slaves. The more slaves they have, the more labor they have, the more they're able to produce, the more they're able to produce, the more they can sell. And cotton is king, so they wanted more slaves to produce cotton. So what did they do? They started mortgaging slaves. So like a home, if you don't have the full cash to pay for a home, you pull out a mortgage. They'll give you a loan for it. So if you don't have the full cash to pay for a slave, they will give you a mortgage, a loan on that slave. Meaning you acquire the slave and you make payments when the payments are due until you pay off for the slave. Meaning you could leverage a person like debt. And to push it further, these banks also then created bonds backed by those mortgages. So they created bonds backed by those mortgages. A bond is kind of like an IOU. So let's say I purchase a bond from one of those Southerners. Those Southerners will owe me, whatever I purchased the bond for, they will owe me that money with interest. That's how bonds work as a bondholder. So, and if they don't pay me back that bond, then I will have access to the mortgage that they receiving the payments on for the slave that's being financed. So that kind of motivated me to really get into the financial market industry, because if these markets existed from slavery days, it's like, it's the 2019. After slavery, my research then took me into the wealth gap. One way to become wealthy is to own a business with laborers, right? The second way to become wealthy is to invest in the financial markets, right? And before we get to the third and final way to become wealthy, of course, I have to enlighten you on my research as to what brought me there. The wealth gap is simple. The top 10%. The top 10% is pretty much like 10% of the nation's population that owns over 50% of the nation's wealth. After studying the wealth gap, really and truly, you think it's about labor, white people have better jobs than black people, white people get paid more than black people, and I've heard things like, black people spend their money on frivolous things and white people do this with their money and this, that, and the third. But one major element that we all easily miss when it comes to the wealth gap is generational wealth, meaning the wealth that has been passed from one generation to the next. Poor people don't really have the benefit of generational wealth, whereas the rich, they have the benefit of generational wealth most of the time. So that's one of the hugest key factors in the wealth gap. And when you say, well, how does, the rich people have generational wealth? How was they able to acquire all of this wealth in the economy? And it all goes back to slavery and capitalism, capitalist society that started with slavery, After I recognized the wealth gap, I wanted to really dive deep into the behaviors and understandings of a wealthy individual versus a poor or middle class individual. And honestly, it's like everything is a circle, it's a cycle, and it all brings you right back into alignment, okay? The difference between the behaviors or characteristics of a rich person versus a poor person when it comes to earning income is that rich people don't work for their money at all. They get other people to work. And poor people use their time for money. So the behaviors and characteristics that I realized between rich people and poor people is that poor people are more ready to use their time for money, to trade off their time for money, whereas rich people, they don't work for their money at all. They don't work for the money they earn. They literally put money up and then make that money work for them by way of people or investing. And poor people, they usually, I believe it's due to lack of confidence or experience or even knowledge, that they easily just is ready to, submit their time in exchange for money. The understanding how savings work, poor people don't invest, rich people invest. And when I say invest, I mean they invest into the financial markets. And most poor people don't invest into financial markets. That information led me to the second way to become wealthy, and that's by engaging in the financial markets, investing. After I concluded that rich people pretty much don't work for their money and poor people use their time for money, that led me into earned income versus unearned income. So I pretty much discovered, what's earned income versus what's unearned income. I had an idea of earned income versus unearned income due to my tax preparation experience. So But diving deeper into it in a way to understand, why rich people are so into unearned income. What is unearned income? So when we look at unearned income and earned income, let's break it down. I did a video on YouTube in regards to earned income versus unearned income on the my channel called Bottomless Finance. Earned income is any monies that you earn by working, either by working a job or by working a business, working or owning a business. Those two ways are earned income. Now, unearned income is monies that you receive without having to physically work for it. Examples of unearned income would be stocks. Number one reason why I indulge in stocks and invest in stocks is because only thing I have to do is put up my money and then sit back and let it do what it do. Stocks, investing in stocks, I literally make money in my sleep. Like, literally. I don't think about nothing, I don't move nothing, I just go to sleep, wake up, and then make more money, bam. But another example of unearned income would be you own a 2-family home and you live in one apartment of the home, and the other apartment of the home you happen to rent out, and you earn money by way of that. That's another example of unearned income. So earned income is money that you have to physically work for in order to get, and unearned income is money that you don't physically work for in order to acquire. So back to rich people versus poor people. Rich people mostly indulge in unearned income, and poor people mostly indulge in earned income. And for me, my understanding of that is that poor people more so gravitate towards instant gratification due to, lack of confidence, experience, or knowledge in regards to earning income. So, the third and final way to become wealthy would be to acquire assets. Acquire assets that appreciates in value. Acquire assets that grow in value. To wrap it up, the only 3 ways you can become wealthy or rich, besides being a celebrity, is to own a business and employ laborers. Own a business with labor. The second way is to invest into the financial markets. Invest into the financial markets. Earn unearned income. And last and final way is acquire assets that grow in value. When you acquire assets that grow in value, that can be unearned income. So I hope this was helpful, and I wish I was able to get deeper into my research, but I don't want to get too intellectual on you guys, because y'all know I'm really philosophical, so I'll get a little distracted and all that stuff. So I hope this was helpful, and please join Bankrollers if you're really interested in making money, growing money, and protecting money. Join Bankrollers, visit primaccounting.com, and as always, please support my GoFundMe for my law school tuition fund. Much appreciation, and have a lovely weekend. Bye.